She sat in the crown for less than 3 years. And in that silence, a kingdom quietly rewrote its future without her permission. King Charles didn't just take Camilla's crown. He took the power behind it, and he handed it directly to Catherine, Princess of Wales. Not with a speech, not with a ceremony, with silence. The kind of silence that speaks louder than any royal court announcement ever could. And here's what nobody is talking about. Camilla reportedly made one final, desperate demand to lock in her position. A written guarantee, a promise on paper. And the palace? Pause, they didn't just say no. They didn't even give her the dignity of a meeting. They shut it down like she was a junior employee asking for a corner office. That wasn't a marital disagreement. That was an institutional verdict. Cold, calculated, and final. Let me show you how we got here, because this wasn't a sudden betrayal. This was a slow-motion coronation that has been unfolding for years, right under everyone's nose. If you're new to Palace Exposed, hit subscribe. This one is going to get messy. Before we get into the chaos of today, you have to go back to one moment they all want you to forget. The year is 2005. The press is brutal. The public is booing. Diana's ghost is still sitting higher in the polls than Charles and Camilla combined. So the palace makes a deal, a public one. Camilla will be known as Princess Consort, not Queen. That was the actual promise. Queen Elizabeth herself put out a statement floating Queen Consort as an eventual possibility, but the deal with the British public was clear: Princess Consort. Lower title, softer landing. They weren't being humble, they were being terrified, and honestly, they should have been. But here's the thing about promises made behind palace walls: they only last as long as nobody important feels like breaking them. The second ambition got in the way, that promise died. Quick, quiet, like it never existed. In 2022, the Queen passes. Charles takes the throne. And within hours, he's dragging Camilla up there beside him as Queen Consort, like the whole Princess Consort thing was a typo. Like we all just misunderstood. The British public didn't misunderstand. They got bait and switched, and they knew it. After spending decades being the most hated woman in Britain, playing the villain in Diana's tragedy, Camilla got the crown anyway. Turns out, if you just hang around long enough, the monarchy will eventually rewrite its own rules just to keep the furniture looking tidy. But here's the part nobody writes about. Even with a crown on her head, Camilla was reportedly standing on floor made of thin ice from day one. Palace insiders claimed her office was being kept in the dark on the things that actually matter: succession planning, long-term strategy, charity direction, messaging. The keys to the kingdom were sitting in a drawer she couldn't reach. She got the tiara. She got the state dinners. She got the photo ops. But the steering wheel? Locked. The royals were perfectly happy to let her wear the diamonds as long as she stayed far away from decisions that shaped the future. Now, here's where the story turns. Because while the world was busy watching Harry and Meghan's Netflix specials and podcast drama, a much bigger move was happening behind closed doors. Catherine wasn't just out there cutting ribbons for the cameras. She was building something the palace hadn't seen in decades: actual, institutional power. Her early childhood project wasn't another royal charity where you slap your name on a banner and show up once a year for a photo. She brought in neuroscientists, government officials, real policy people. She started talking about data, social impact, and measurable outcomes. In a family that mostly stands around looking expensive, she was the only one actually getting things done. And the king noticed. You can't fake competence, especially not when you're fighting your own mortality and watching someone else quietly become the most trusted person in the room. Then came early 2024. Catherine had cancer. She said it herself, out loud, on camera, no spin, no palace handlers feeding her lines. Just a calm, direct video from a woman who had every right to break and didn't. The public wasn't just sympathetic. They were wrecked. People piled flowers outside Kensington Palace without being told to. Not a PR stunt. Not a managed moment. It was genuine, the kind of grief Britain hadn't felt since 1997. Since Diana. That comparison was awkward for everyone in Buckingham Palace, because it was true. And the way she handled it, the calm, the grace, the time she took coming back, the way she protected her kids from the circus, it didn't just move the public. It moved the palace. Sources told People magazine that Charles, himself fighting cancer, sat with a question he couldn't ignore. Who actually has the trust to carry this thing forward? It turns out, nothing says promotion like staying classy while your whole life is falling apart on a global stage. By spring 2025, the shift was visible enough that even the polite British press couldn't look away. Major outlets were reporting that Charles was actively moving the heavy lifting off Camilla's desk and onto Catherine's. This wasn't a calendar reshuffle. This was a deliberate, structured stripping of power. A passing of institutional weight to the one person the public actually loves. And the gut punch detail, the patronages. In the royal world, patronages aren't hobbies. They're stock in the family business. Several of Camilla's biggest ones, the arts, the hospitals, the libraries, projects she spent decades building, were quietly handed over to Catherine. Erased, deleted, like a career she never had. Access changed too. Conversations that would have been reserved for Charles and Camilla alone were now including Catherine. The king's inner advisory circle was expanding, and it was expanding in one direction only, toward the daughter-in-law, toward William, toward the future. None of this was officially announced. Of course not. The palace doesn't do press conferences about internal power redistributions. It communicates through silence. Through what happens, not through what is said. And what was happening told a story every royal correspondent knew how to read. Camilla saw it all coming. And according to Angela Levin, who has sources deep inside the palace, Camilla finally snapped. She demanded a written guarantee, a real one, on paper. That her rank, her remaining jobs, her status, none of it would be touched. Protection from Catherine's rise. Protection from the next public opinion shift. It was the royal version of a prenup, delivered right when the family was falling apart from health crises and public scrutiny. Insiders called it an ultimatum wrapped in polite language, which is just a fancy way of saying she held a quiet knife to her husband's throat and called it a request. Pause. The king's team said no. Cold, fast, no meeting, no negotiation. They told her the monarchy has to stay flexible, which is code for we need to follow whoever the public actually likes, and right now, that isn't you. They said denying her was for her own good. The ultimate corporate move, firing someone's ego while claiming it's for the company's health. Translation was brutal. You can keep the title. You can keep the seat at the parade. But the actual power, off the table. Because a written contract is just a pesky obstacle to the next reshuffle when they need one. Sources close to her say she was livid. But she didn't explode. She went silent. The kind of silence you only learn after being hated by an entire country for 30 years and surviving it. No leaks. No tabloid meltdowns. No revenge interviews. Just cold. Pointed. Freezing. Anyone inside the palace lately will tell you that silence is louder than any press release she's ever made. While Camilla sat in that cold silence, Charles was already sketching the next era of the crown, one centered entirely on William and Catherine. His slimmed-down monarchy wasn't just a speech line anymore. It was policy, and it was already moving people out of the frame. The prince and princess aren't just being treated like future assets. They're being treated like current ones. Charles is reportedly checking Catherine's speeches, opening doors that usually take decades of seniority to unlock, using her recovery as a public relations win for the monarchy itself. He's treating her like a CEO treats their hand-picked successor, investing everything he has left in the one person he believes can save the company. When he's gone, Camilla fits less and less cleanly into that future. She earned respect. She earned grudging acceptance. Against staggering odds, she survived the public's wrath and rebuilt her image. That deserves recognition. But the king's calculus is reportedly clear. She's a figure of the present, distinguished, accomplished, but present, not future. Charles has apparently decided the future belongs to Catherine, and the generation she represents. And here is the cruelest irony of all of this. The version of this story can't be told without confronting the ghost that has lived in every room of Buckingham Palace since August 1997. Diana has been gone nearly 3 decades. She has been absent longer than many of her modern mourners have been alive. Yet her shadow still dictates exactly where everyone else is allowed to stand. When Catherine's cancer news dropped in 2024, the public reaction was staggering and achingly familiar. The world doesn't want to admit it, but they were grieving the way they grieved in 1997. The connection to Diana, raw, unfiltered, real, rushed right back to the surface. Not manufactured, not performative, real. Camilla can take every charity. She can stand at every state dinner. She can read every script perfectly and pose for every photograph. It doesn't matter. The feeling the public has for her is polite respect, tolerated, endured. Nothing like the genuine, almost devotional obsession people have for Catherine. No amount of expensive PR can fix a missing kind of love. It is simply not there to manufacture. Tina Brown wrote an entire book about how the royals are still haunted by the 90s, and she is right. Every single move the institution makes today is a reaction to the catastrophic failure they committed against Diana. They failed her. The public never forgot. And they have been waiting, quietly, for someone they actually like to show up and fill that empty space. Now she has, and Camilla is stuck inside a shadow she will never, ever outrun. No matter how many ribbons she cuts, so what is the actual point of all of this? Camilla spent half her life fighting a family that hated her, being blamed for a marriage that was already broken long before she arrived, sitting through decades of being called every name in the press, and kept going. She survived. She earned a crown. She earned a little grudging respect. And now, that crown is being quietly hollowed out, because someone younger showed up and the public actually likes her. Catherine never asked for this fight. She was just trying to get healthy, raise her kids, and do her job without the extra headache of a power struggle she never wanted. Meanwhile, Charles is reportedly the one pulling every string while fighting a cancer diagnosis that would sideline most men his age entirely. And this is the brutal truth the palace spin doctors cannot soften. The monarchy has survived for centuries by letting people keep the title while quietly taking away the power. They have done it to queens. They have done it to consorts. They have done it to dynasties. They are experts at making a role look important from the outside and completely empty from the inside. Camilla isn't being kicked out. She isn't being publicly shamed. She is being managed, carefully, quietly, until her position becomes purely ceremonial and nothing more. It is cold. It is calculated. It is exactly the kind of move kings have been making for centuries when the survival of the institution hangs in the balance. Charles is betting the entire future of the crown on one person, Catherine. Because she is the only one in the family the public actually wants to see on their coins. He is willing to push his own wife into the background to save the family business. And that is the part no PR campaign can spin away. Because Camilla isn't a chess piece. She isn't a brand. She is a woman who got blamed for ruining something that was already in flames before she arrived, who sat through decades of being treated like a national villain, who put in the work, showed up, did the job, and finally earned a little forgiveness. And even that forgiveness is being quietly renegotiated because a younger face showed up and made the optics look better. Long pause. The institution will always survive. It always does. But the people inside it do not always get to keep what they were promised. And Camilla just learned that lesson the hard way.